will be appearing forever on YouTube. And one other thing, we are, it's been a crazy year, this pandemic, and I know you want to support your local businesses, your local bookstores, your local indies, and we are exhorting everyone to shop during the weekdays and in the morning hours and in the later hours as well. Try to avoid so many people being crammed in the bookstore. And we are getting started. This is going to be one of our most enjoyable events. We always look forward to the publisher reps coming to the bookstores, and we've been missing it this year. And last month we had a great one of these, and this month it's going to be just as good too. Our first guest tonight is Anne DeCourcy from Harper Collins. Come on, Anne. All right, take us away.
All right. Hi, everybody. And I see some familiar faces there, Annie. There she is. Hi. And I'm going to share my screen and talk away and hope this works. Share. There we go. Tell me if this is good. There I am, Anne DeCourcy. I'm with Harper Collins Publishers. And like David said, buy books, buy them soon, buy them now. A lot of us publishers are having issues with stock and getting books back into bookstores. So if you see it there, buy it right away. The first one, there we go, is The Arrest from Jonathan Lethem. This is the second book that HarperCollins has published of his, and the first that I've ever read myself. And I have to say, it was an absolute treat. The Arrest is a time in the world when everything has stopped. Electronics, televisions, gasoline stations, everything has arrested. And it's set in a small community on the coast of Maine, where people coexist carefully and well together, where they barter for items that they need, and live a very wholesome lifestyle until, as you can see in the cover of this book, this, I've forgotten what it is. It's a tunnel building, nuclear powered machine that also can brew a wicked cup of coffee. And it arrives in this town and creates havoc. And it's very, very funny. It's also, I think, very pertinent for our times where we rely so much on electronics, where they're no longer available. So you don't know what to believe and what to not to believe about the world outside. So that's Jonathan Lethem's The Arrest, and that is available now in the store. The next is an absolute sweet little book. This is paper over board, which means that it is a book that doesn't have a jacket, but it's a 1999 hardcover written by a Japanese author. It was a bestseller with over 1 million copies sold in Japan, and it is just this wonderful story of people who go to this small cafe in Japan and order a cup of coffee and sit at a particular table in that cafe and can travel in time to a pertinent point in their past and reobserve what went on. But they have to do this all in the span of time that it takes for the coffee to get cold, and then they have to come back. And they can't do anything to change the past, but what they learn there very much changes their present and their futures. It's a beautifully written book. Nice quote here from Mike in Saratoga Springs. Cold Millions, oh my goodness, one of my favorite books in this list. Jess Walter is just this fabulous writer, and every book he does is somewhat different and just really engrossing. The last book, which was huge for him, was Beautiful Ruins. This one, The Cold Millions, is set in early 20th century Spokane, Washington, where unionizing efforts are not taking hold well because the robber barons are beating down anybody who tries to bring up the unions. It features Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, who I found out is originally, I think, from Concord, New Hampshire, who is there to help these unions take hold, and a pair of brothers who are both homeless, living on the porch of a kind local person, trying to save their pennies so they can buy land. And they get involved in this incredibly colorful cast of characters. I just was enthralled with this book. I think Spokane comes across as a character itself. The times are gritty and dark, and yet ultimately hopeful. So that's Cold Millions, Jess Walter. The next, get ready to root for the bad guys. This is the book Hench from Natalie Zina Walschatz. And I love the quotes on this. It's delightfully evil. This is the story of Anna, who is a henchwoman to the bad guys. And one day she gets really badly injured by the good guys, the superheroes who are there to rescue the day, and cause so much damage that she is laid up for months. During that time, she takes her smarts and she starts analyzing all the damage done by the good guys and comes up with a dastardly plan to take down the best superhero of all times. Love this book with a passion. It's just so much fun to read. It is not about superheroes and their capes, although there's a little bit of that, but just a really great story. This is a great gift for anybody who's ever loved anything that Neil Gaiman has written. It is a hardcover. It's an anthology of excerpts from his whole genre of writing. All of these were selected by his fans. So he kind of took those that had the most votes and put them into this massive volume. So great gift for anybody who, again, reads Neil Gaiman. And nice quote from someone in Manchester, Vermont. Oh my goodness, Snow, John Banville, another book that just blew me away. I've never read him before, and I've forgotten what his other name is that he writes under, but this is a literary Agatha Christie style murder mystery set in Ireland in the, I think 1920s or 30s. And a priest has been found murdered in the estate of Colonel Osborne. And a young detective is sent in to investigate. And this detective just so happens to be Protestant. So, oh no. There he is in this Catholic home and not well received. It is a really just wonderfully evocative novel. There's some gruesome bits to it so it's not for kids, but I just couldn't put this down, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for something that's literary and very much a whodunit. And then this one, oh my goodness, Barack Before Obama. These are candid photographs that David Katz took of Barack while he was Senator Obama, as he was going through that campaign leading up to his presidential run. And they're just wonderful, candid photographs. It's a celebration of the man whom so many of us appreciate and love. And it just showcases the good that we have had with him. So nice Christmas gift and out now. The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Now, this is a book that we may have a stock situation on. So if you are interested in this, buy it fast. But this is just this really funny story. And it's nonfiction of Vietnam era. And John Chick Donahue, who was drinking beer with his friends in New York and thought about his friends over in Vietnam and thought they might like a cold beer. So he bought some cold beer and delivered it to all his friends in Vietnam. Really funny. I've had people read this who are veterans from the Vietnam War and just say that it kind of brought joy. So I think a good read. And then Sex with Presidents, Eleanor Herman. This is just naughty. It's really, really, really naughty. It's looking at all those sexual exploits of presidents and of people of power. And I love Jennifer's quote here: if you're into stately, thoughtful biographies of presidents, this is likely not for you. So don't buy this if you want something serious. Like I said, quite naughty. The Writers' Library is Nancy Pearl collaborating with Jeff Schwager, and they look at 23 literary legends of the day and interviewed them about the books that impacted them. And so this is essays about each of those authors and then a list of great books to read. Again, a book lover's gift. And this is my very small selection of delightfully entertaining books for children. The first one is another Neil Gaiman book, Pirate Stew. It's by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Chris Riddell. Neil wrote this for his young son. And it's just a fun kind of pirate romp where parents are going off for a night on the town and hire babysitters who happen to be a whole gang of pirates who come in and just have delightful times with those kids. Nobody gets eaten, at least the kids don't get eaten, but fun book. Class Act, Jerry Craft. This is a follow-up to his Newbery Medal winner, which is the big medal for kids' books. It's a companion to New Kid. And this takes a character from New Kid and explores Drew's world through the lens of economic disparity, which sounds pretty big for a kid's book, but it's fun. It's entertaining. Drew is good friends to a young boy called Liam and discovers that Liam is from the 1%, whereas Drew is very much not. And it's just good, great art. In fact, people are saying that they think this one is perhaps even better than New Kid. So fingers crossed on that. Good book. Oh, Sharon Creech, what a great writer. One Time. This is a book that I just loved. She is inspired in this in the chapter openers by referring to different novels, children's books, and the teacher in this takes those children's books and engages with the kids in her writing class to have them do a writing prompt based on these stories that are classics of children's literature. And it is the story of Miss Lightstone, who introduces a love of reading and writing to her students, including two who are quite unique and quirky characters who don't really fit in with everybody else, and yet kind of opens up the doors to them of being good with who they are. Beautiful writing. Sharon Creech is regional. She lives in Maine, and she also has won the Newbery Award in the past. Oh, The Left-Handed Booksellers of London, Garth Nix. Oh my gosh, I love this book passionately. Garth Nix in this just draws upon all those classics of kids' literature that are kind of forces of ancient evil that come in and stress out human beings, and they have to fight back, but they don't know how to fight back. And this is the story of a young woman who doesn't know her heritage. And it quickly becomes evident that there's something really different about whoever her father was. And she is kind of the focus of these ancient forces of evil that come in. Garth Nix is a great writer. This is the kind of book I just gobble up. It is also a book where we have very limited inventory, so buy it fast. And then the last book for me is Punching the Air from Ibi Zoboi and Youssef Salam. Youssef Salam is one of the exonerated 5 from the Central Park jogger case. Ibi Zoboi is a National Book Award finalist. And together they collaborate on this fictional story of a 16-year-old Muslim boy who has been arrested and accused of a crime that he didn't commit. But there he is in prison, and he has to survive, and he has to fight for being released and being believed. And does it beautifully in this with poetry and art. This is a novel in verse, so it's free verse. It's very, very readable, and it's very passionate, and just an incredible read. And that was all of my books. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great list. Many wonderful things there. I believe, actually, David and everyone, was it John who was going next? Was that, okay. I was on the sales floor all day today, so I was not as up on the correspondence with everyone. Next is our wonderful sales rep from Simon & Schuster, John Hughes. So take it away, John.
Thank you very much. Share screen. All right, you guys can hear me okay? First of all, I just noticed in preparing for this, I've got a little Stephen Colbert flip in the back of my head. So I think it's kind of time for maybe a haircut or something. It's one of the things you don't pay attention to until all of a sudden it's there. Hey everyone, again, I am John Muse from Simon & Schuster. Simon & Schuster, like Harper and Penguin Random House, we do a lot of adult and a lot of children's books, a wide variety. And so I tried to pick a bunch out just to sort of go through them fairly quickly so you can get a sense of the breadth of titles we offer. So to start things off, Jerry Seinfeld's book came out in October, early October. It's just a great collection of his work over the last 45 years. It turns out that I think you all know that Jerry Seinfeld is not a guy who uses any profanity, so I think it's a very good book to give to someone else as a pretty safe bet. And of course, it also shows his progression as a comedian over the course of his career. And in case you're curious, is this anything? Is what actually comedians kind of ask each other when it comes to a bit they've discovered. They sort of want to present it in a club, but they want to ask somebody else, is this anything? Is it any good? I thought it was kind of a clever little title there. She Come By It Natural. Dolly Parton is in our hearts and our minds. So it seems like forever and for a day, and it has been for such a long time. This is a little bit different take on Dolly Parton, which I think you're all going to appreciate. Sarah Smarsh, the author, comes from the middle part of the country, Kansas, and she wrote a wonderful memoir called Heartland. In this book, she's looking at Dolly as an American icon, as a feminist leader, as a sort of a, her place in American culture. And I think it's sort of a great different kind of perspective on Dolly that you would not otherwise get from other things. We can appreciate her, far and wide for her talent, but here's an author looking at her from a different point of view, which I think is, awfully interesting. Eleanor, A Life. This is, I was wondering during Anne's presentation whether Eleanor is going to be involved in Sex with Presidents from Harper Collins, but I don't think that she is. I think she's probably got her own little thing going on here. So Eleanor, author David Michaelis is looking at a comprehensive portrayal of Eleanor, and it's gotten tons of accolades. It's selling very well in a lot of markets around the country. And I think the number one thing is that he looks at the later life of Eleanor especially, and brings a lot of information that perhaps some scholars and certainly some general readers may not already know about her career after FDR passed away. So phenomenal book. Everybody's still looking for it. There's some stock situations. If you want to buy, you should buy it soon. Joe Biden, just to mention, we did this book in late October. It was ready to go when Biden was running, and we decided to go ahead and publish this. Evan Osnos, the author, is a Pulitzer Prize winner. It's a fairly quick book at 192 pages, looking at Biden, where he comes from, his career, growing up, and what matters to him, and therefore what matters to us now. So it's a nice gift book, I think, to somebody out there looking for some quick look at Joe Biden's life. Forgive my voice, I'm getting raspy this evening. Group. Christy Tate was a successful business person, doing very well for herself, but she still had these issues with considering suicide, real problems that are going on in her life. And she was at her wit's end, and she met a doctor, a psychologist, who invited her to join his group therapy session. And she found that, speaking up and sharing her thoughts and her fears and everything else, basically being honest in this group setting really, helped her significantly. This is a Reese Witherspoon pick for November, a very popular title. And the editor of this book also brought to publishing a previous book called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, which of course is in the same vein, but it's a different, more specific personal point of view. Fathoms. If you like your books on nature and of course the natural environment, or in this case specifically whales, you're in luck. This jacket image is just beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's a meditation on the lives of whales. And we think it's a very good cross between authors like Rebecca Solnit and Annie Dillard. Similarly, given the environmental theme, The Age of Wood, the editor for this book published a book a number of years ago now called American Canopy about America's forest lands. And this is kind of in the same vein where how important is the harvesting of wood and the use of wood been in the creation of civilizations? And it's just one of those kind of things where I think that people who like to buy or receive or read these big history books with a specific slant are kind of in for a treat. I think of people like Mark Kurlansky, you might be familiar with, as a sort of a good comparison author. Maggie Smith, Keep Moving. Maggie Smith is an acknowledged and award-winning poet, but after in the wake of her divorce, she started posting these Twitter pieces, these little small essays and thoughts, and she got so much feedback from her fans. She decided to put it together into entire book-length form. So think of this, something for the readers of Cheryl Strayed or Annie Lamott. It can be seen as a guide for anyone facing life's challenges and facing them with creativity and courage and resilience. The Decameron Project. This is interesting. Back in March, the New York Times decided to sort of start doing this program where they were approaching modern day writers, 29 different modern day writers, to do individual pieces about life in the pandemic, life, during this whole sort of catastrophe we've been going through. And their basis, of course, was the original Boccaccio's The Decameron, which was written, way back hundreds of years ago. And in that book, in case you don't know, the characters in that tale were all holed up in Florence, Italy during the Black Plague, telling and writing stories about their situation. So it's a very similar kind of idea with a wonderful sort of writing from all these major writers here. So smallish trim size, 5 by 7.5, kind of works out very well on the gift side. For fiction, I'll try to speed up here, Rachel, I'm sorry. At the End of the Day, Bill Clegg. Bill Clegg is an acknowledged, great literary writer. He's gotten such some wonderful reviews over the years for his books. This is the newest hardcover coming in late September. It reminds us how choices, whether to connect, to betray, or to protect those we love or in our family, and how those choices becomes our legacy. You can see the quote there from Good Morning America, and we had scads of others. It's a very, very well-written and passionate book, given the family saga here. Cobble Hill. I'd not read Cobble Hill, but this is one of those books where you think to yourself, a rep sort of thinks to themselves, during sales conference, it's going to be a very regionalized kind of book, and it's not going to, make much headway. It's Cobble Hill is a very small section of Brooklyn, but the editor in the presentation said to us that this is a, book that had weird, wonderful, and deliciously sinister, three-dimensional and relatable characters. And so it ended up in my case, not being regional. I have bookstores across New England who are, reordering it now. So you can see the accolades from various magazines and websites that are sort of saying it's one of the best of the year. So give it a try. Lisa Jewell. Lisa Jewell this is like her 18th book, and the first 14 or 15 she wrote were just sort of contemporary sort of dramas with a women's angle. She started doing the Gillian Flynn thing and doing psychological thrillers, and then the last 4 or 5 books have been in that vein, and she's just doing very well for us in terms of sales. So if you've not read this author before and you like a good mystery thriller, a good psychological thriller, she's definitely one to sort of get into. White Ivy, though, is an author you've probably never heard of because we just published this a month ago, and Susie Yang is definitely a debut author. This is a very well-written novel. This is one of those things where when I was reading it, I kind of thought about Patricia Highsmith and her book, and then became a movie, The Talented Mr. Ripley, because this Chinese-American character is sort of making her way sort of insidiously into the life of a privileged young man she's trying to sort of get to know and hopefully marry someday, to get herself away from her own circumstances. And you can see the quotes there was deliciously twisty and truly addictive by some of the reviewers. And so it's definitely one to watch. And it's for fans of Celeste Ng and Donna Tartt. Then lastly, on the adult side, The Only Good Indians. Oh man, if you haven't read a good literary horror novel in a while, and if Joe Hill and people like that are your thing, this is a very good one to go with. It's Stephen Graham Jones is a Native American writer, and he's doing a Native American story here where these 4 hunters were out just in a day, and they ended up killing this doe who was just about to give birth. And it's the repercussions of that incident, of that kill 10 years later, that's coming back to haunt the 4 individuals. I was startled throughout the second half of the book, especially. Pretty darn great stuff if you like this kind of fiction. On the children's side, to change tack completely, but I wanted to show you some picture books here. Unicorns Are the Worst. The title kind of tells it all. It's a delightful tale, the proverbial 40 pages. There's a goblin and he's complaining about the unicorns who live next door, and they are just the worst because they're so nice and they float and they're nice and they're pink and they're sparkly and everything else. And they don't work hard enough. They don't get things done. And of course, in the course of the book, the characters, the reader sort of learns we all need to be better neighbors and to understand each other better. It is a lot of humor and heart. I really like the look of when I draw Panda, this young girl is drawing she can't draw for a lick, but she starts making these circles on the page, and the circles sort of end up becoming a panda who becomes her companion. So it's just a lovely story about individuality. You can see my notes right here that the author has a son on the autism spectrum, and she sort of got inspired by, the kind of creativity that can come from individuality. So I think it's an outstanding, new picture book. And then You Matter. You Matter came out in June, but it's already, it has become one of the New York Times' 25 best children's books of the year. You can see some of my words there, the quotes that came through, whimsy, intelligence, lyrical, non-judgmental. The author, Christian Robinson, is an acclaimed African-American writer and illustrator, and his message is loud and clear: yes, you do matter. It's an important message for lots of kids. I have 2 picture books that are for our 2 president and our vice presidential sort of winners. Thank you very much. Dr. Jill Biden is doing a book about her husband, Joe, when he was young. This is only from his younger age and his growing up and his assuming leadership roles. And then Nikki Grimes is an acclaimed poet and writer, African-American, doing this picture book bio of Kamala Harris. Over to YA, we have Legend Born. This is it's a debut. I don't think it's a debut. It might be a debut fantasy. I'm trying to rack my brain here, but this is one that the editors were all very excited about, and it's definitely panned out for us. The sales have been very strong. If you have young people who like fantasy, this is a top notch. The main character is a woman of color, a young woman of color, and the storyline sort of mimics and goes along with a reimagining of the Arthurian legend. You can see the quotes there down the bottom, searing and engrossing and intoxicating. This is one of those ones that if you can have a person out there like this, it's definitely one to get for them. Also a YA, but much more realistic. This is a Jennifer DeLeon lives in the outskirts of Boston, and she was part of the METGO program, an ongoing program where they allow kids who are in the inner city to sort of have better possibilities extended to them, in the outskirts in the suburban areas and better schools. And so Liliana, the main character, is also a Latinx woman who gets sent to a new school. And there are a couple of kids who are students who are sort of in her ethnic class, but she finds, of course, a lot of microaggressions, and it's how she deals with that that becomes so important in the story. And you can see again the quote from Celestine sort of backing that up. Jason Reynolds has done a lot of books for us. He's won outstanding acclaim and multiple awards. I think he's currently the ambassador for literature, I believe, for children's books. This is a graphic novel version of one of his most recent books, and we like the idea of doing Jason Reynolds in a graphic novel sort of format. And then lastly, for middle grade, we have 2 books. Both of these are going to be part of an ongoing series, but if you have young people in that 8 to 12 age group who have not picked up the Spy School series, for example, by Stu Gibbs, definitely go out there and grab one of these copies or grab any of the books in the series because they're all outstanding. The young character, Ben Ripley, sort of finds himself literally going to spy school. He's a kid going to a spy school. And of course, it's in each successive book, more and more adventures await him as he tries to fight all these evil empires and these evil organizations. And then lastly, Unlocked Book 8.5. Similar situation where if you have an 8 to 12-year-old who's not picked up this series, Keepers of the Lost Cities, this is one of those books where you really ought to introduce them to them. Each of the books is like between 600 and 800 pages, which is to say there's a lot of similarities to the Harry Potter series. They're very engrossing. The fans are a multitude across the country. I've seen videos of the author giving presentations in schools where there were like 500 kids in the audience kind of thing. So if you like a good fantasy series for 8 to 12-year-olds, this is definitely right up their alley. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, John. That was fantastic. A great list. So next up is our wonderful sales rep from Penguin Kids, Susie Albert, who is here to talk about some more wonderful kids books for the kids in your life, or honestly the grown-up. I myself, some of my favorite reading these days is kids books. So take it away, Susie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's really, it's very true. There are many, many children's books that adults love. So take it from me and Rachel, we know. Hanukkah begins on December 10th. So I had to bring out one of my favorites to share with you, which is Goodnight Bubala. This is an extremely funny riff on the old classic Goodnight Moon, but with Yiddishisms like boobies and zadies and schlepping and kvelling and dreidels and gelt and a latke recipe by Ina Garten at the very end. It's a delightful parody to celebrate the Festival of Lights with your whole mishpacha, which means family. And then going to Christmas, we've got the Crayons Christmas, and this came out last year, but I just had to bring it because it's been so successful, and I left it shrink wrap so I could show you how pristine it is in stores, but I'll do my own little unboxing live and in person for you here with this book and show you how cool this is, because it's very interactive. It's a story, but there's like envelopes in it that have things in it like games and cards and punch out puzzles, and there is a story running throughout it, and it ends with a pop-up. So it's extremely fun, and it came out last year, and it's already, as you can see, gift wrapped and ready to go. Next, I have Great Little Stocking Stuffer. This is absolutely perfectly sized for stockings. This is DK's Pocket Genius series. If you don't like this title, there are 14 more titles to choose from, which I don't know if you can really see this because they're very small, but just perfect little stocking stuffer and very good price at $5.99. And if the stocking is a little bit bigger, and you can go for a board book by Eric Carle, you can go with Dream Snow, which is an oldie but a goodie. And it tells the story of a farmer who's dreaming of the first snowfall of the year. And it offers everything that little people like: counting, animals, lift the flaps, and shiny bits on the cover and on the inside. So lots of fun with this one for the family, and really, really sturdy. Okay, I woke up this morning to controversy about Roald Dahl, but he was already in my presentation, so I'm going for it anyway, because the man is an amazing writer. He might have made some mistakes in terms of his views on anti-Semitism or on being anti-Semitic, but he's a great writer. So again, for possible stocking stuffers for ages 7 and up, really any book by Roald Dahl, who's a master storyteller. I'm a big fan of this one in particular, the BFG, because it's so much fun to read. And the stories are so clever and full of puns and amazing phrasing that you as the reader have just as much fun reading to your audience as your audience gets in listening to the books. So lots to choose from here with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, Matilda, and others. And then in a new chapter book series by Jennifer Jacobson, who's a Maine-based author, and this is just a dummy, sorry, I didn't have the finished copy, but this is a new chapter book series. And it just came out in October. There are 2 books that came out simultaneously in paperback. And the stories tell about life lived in a tiny house, which sisters Twig and Turtle share with their parents and their Great Dane. The sisters like each other most of the time and have each other's backs. The books have heart and humor and a grandma with a tattoo. They're perfect for fans of Judy Moody and Ivy and Bean, and I just loved it. All right, on to picture books. We have so many picture books at Penguin Young Readers that is just impossible to choose. So I just had to go for my favorites, and some of these are not brand new, like this one, which came out last year. So this is a story about friendship and capturing and celebrating special moments and understanding that relationships can still be sustained over a distance. When Evelyn has to move, she and Llewellyn figure out how to continue to share the magic of their friendship by sharing all the great things they experience together. Actually, this came out in January of this year, I'm sorry, and has received 4-star reviews in the trade presses, and it's just magical and delightful and wonderful. And another picture book is Oliver Jeffers' Here We Are. You've probably heard of Oliver Jeffers from Crayons Christmas and the Crayons Who Came Home and Quit. But this is another one of his. This was a New York Times bestseller, a best book of 2017 from NPR, a Time Magazine best book of the year. And in it, Oliver explains the world to his newborn son, Harland. He introduces him to the solar system and space, and then drills into the earth, the land, the sea, the sky, and then our bodies. And most importantly, the people most importantly, people, because you're never really alone on earth. Let's see, what is it? The New York Times Book Review said, "Here we are as a tour through the land, the sea, the sky, our bodies, dioramas of our wild diversity. Jeffers is the master of capturing the joy in our difference." Really lovely. Great book for new parents. And a lot of Black voices on our list, which are terrific and wonderful and important. And this is a fantastic one this is by former NFL receiver Matthew Cherry, who played for the Bengals, the Panthers, and the Ravens. And this book comes from a short film that he made of the same name, Hair Love, which is tender and humorous and so heartwarming. And I highly recommend you Google it after this presentation and watch it, because it's just so good. But the book celebrates Black men and their daughters. It encourages self-affirmation and depicts a loving, respectful relationship between a nurturing father and his cool, confident daughter. Zuri's hair has a mind of its own, but Daddy figures out how to give her just what she needs in her fluffy buns. Beautiful book. Another picture book, not another one that's not brand new, but I read this a couple of years ago and it's still making me laugh today like it did when I first read it. Pete wants to play, but the monster just wants to eat him. So he does. But playing alone isn't nearly as much fun. So he spits Pete out with a little bit of goop and decides instead to hug Pete. This is silly and crazy and sweet and funny and totally vetted by a 3-year-old neighbor of mine who insisted I read it to him at least 8 times in a row. And another one, not brand new, but a very funny one, vetted by another 3-year-old neighbor whose family was expecting another member of the family, but not a moose person, not a moose, but a person. But I'm pretty sure Charlotte knew that they were not having a moose, but it was fun to think about anyway. The family in the story is thrilled to have a moose, but once he starts outgrowing the house and missing his kind, they drive to the forest to reunite him. My little neighbor especially liked tracing the route that the family took to get to the forest. It's a quirky and irresistible story about the true meaning of family and the power of love to transcend any difference. Okay, moving on to nonfiction. DK is the master of nonfiction. They're really the best in the business. And this book on rocks and minerals is a great value at $12.99, 96 pages. So many kids go through a train phase and a dinosaur phase and a rocks and minerals phase. So this is really the perfect book for a kid going through this rocks and minerals phase, basically like 6 to 9 years old. And then we move up the age range to 10 plus. And again, I couldn't resist going back to the backlist and pulling one of my all-time favorite series, Sheila Turnage's 3 Times Lucky. In this Newbery Honor Award-winning series of 4 books total, 6th grader Mo Lobo is trying to solve the mystery of why she was found floating down the river as a baby. She's being raised by the Colonel and Miss Lana. Her best friend Dale and a host of many other colorful characters make these wonderfully fun, funny, and poignant stories. Newsday described Mo as an irresistible Southern narrator, a literary descendant of Scout Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. These are just tremendous. It's a wonderful series and great binge for the kid who gets into it and can't wait to read them all. A graphic novel, again, in about the 9 to 12-year-old age range, is from Victoria Jameson and Roller Girl, which is an amazing graphic novel with a message of strength, kindness, and empowerment. The book shows and tells the story of Astrid, who's overcoming bullying and figuring out what's important in her life. It's for fans of Raina Telgemeier, who wrote Smile, Guts, Drama, Sisters, etc. And if you like Victoria Jameson, and this book, she's also written All's Fair in Middle School and Where the Stars Are Scattered, two other beautiful and terrific graphic novels. Wink is one of my favorite books on our list, and it's written by cartoonist Rob Harrell, who writes Adam at Home in the newspaper for some newspapers. Seventh grader Ross Malloy is very nervous about starting seventh grade when he's diagnosed with eye cancer just before school starts. And that makes it seventh grade even more challenging. The book made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me giggle, it made me snort. It has humor and heart and a fantastic cartoon strip called Bat Pig, which Ross draws in order to work out his fears and anxieties. The radiation tech teaches Ross to play guitar. Ross does survive his droopy, goopy eye cancer and even becomes friends with the boy who bullied him. Laughter is the best medicine in this story based on the author's real life experience with eye cancer. The Last Kids on Earth is a huge series for us. It's for the same middle grade audience as Wink, and this is Max Bralyer's Last Kids on Earth. Jack Sullivan is a 13-year-old living in a treehouse since the monster apocalypse has hit them. Wimpy Kids' own Jeff Kinney has endorsed these books, calling them terrifyingly fun. Last Kids on Earth delivers big thrills and even bigger laughs. There are now 7 books in the series, so again, great for binge reading, because once kids get their hands on these, they cannot stop reading them. They're good for boys and girls, because you can see on the cover there's a girl, a June character, so does appeal to boys and girls. And there's a series on Netflix to correspond with it, as well as a video game coming out in spring of 21. All right, and we're getting to the end with young adult. So young adult, this story, Darius the Great is Not Okay, is hilarious and again, heartbreaking and heartwarming, all these words that we keep using for our books, but they're really true. In this book, self-described, Darius calls himself a nerdy, fat, half Persian, Star Trek obsessed, clinically depressed tea drinker. And he's off to Iran for his first trip to learn about his mom's homeland and a lot about himself. It's a coming of age novel. It's a pre-coming out story. And again, it's hilarious and heartbreaking. There's a sequel too that's out now called Darius the Great Deserves Better. I love them both. Both books got starred reviews and numerous awards for debut fiction. And lastly, I had to plug A.S. King's Dig, because this won the 2020 Prince Award, which is the annual award for the best book written for teens based on its literary merit. And boy, does A.S. King write books with merit. This book is surreal, heartbreaking, sometimes downright weird story of 3 generations of a Pennsylvanian family drowning in secrets, racism, abuse, poverty, and mental instability. The story is told from 5 different viewpoints of 5 teenage cousins with names that reflect how others see them, like the Freak, How Can I Help You, and the Shoveler. This is compelling and bizarre and 100% worth reading. And as with most of Amy's books, you go through the emotional ringer, but she ends with hope and some resolution. And this is another one that adults adore. And that's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Susie. This was great. And I thank you all. This was really, really fun.
I'm just answering one more question in the chat before we wrap up. Someone had asked about Victoria Jameson's other titles. I'm putting the others in the chat. Thank you, reps. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everyone, for being here for another great evening. This has been a lot of fun. We have several more events this week. It's kind of a crazy event week. Tomorrow night we have one of my favorite authors, Jane Smiley, Pulitzer winner for 1,000 Acres, talking about her new book, Perestroika in Paris, which is a fantastic book about a racehorse and some other animals in Paris. And she's being interviewed by a local English teacher and racing journalist who knows a lot about both the horse racing and the book end of things. So it's going to be a really fun one. And then later on in the week, we are lucky enough to be hosting James Patterson. So audience, come on back, come to more of our events. I'm going to put that last link that I was pulling up in the chat. And thank you all so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And as a reminder, you can look at the whole list of books on our blog. If you click on, when you go to northshire.com, click on the type where it says Notes from the Shire, and you will see the list of all tonight's books. Thanks, everyone, so much.
Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you.